There's a strange reckoning going on in the video game industry right now. The first quarter of 2026 has shown us a lot about the health of the industry and also the really realistic limits of the industry. Let me go into detail. We have two big hits so far this year, Resident Evil 9 and Crimson Desert. Resident Evil 9 so far, as of the time of making this video, is confirmed to have sold 6 million units. Crimson Desert is confirmed to have sold 5. This is a new IP and a beloved long-time series. So based on these numbers, we know that a long-running franchise can still make a lot of money. And now we know if all the stars align, a new IP can also get a following. There's also a few others. Marathon has sold very respectably. The player count you can have a different conversation about, but there is no doubt the game sold well. Also a new IP from a respected developer. Basically a new IP. Then there was Slay the Spire 2, which sold very, very well. And many others besides. It's been a very good year for games so far. But Crimson Desert and Resident Evil 9 are really the big dogs so far. We know now that those games can sell well, and maybe over the course of several years, Resident Evil 9 will go on to sell maybe 10 plus million over the course of time as it goes on sales and discounts, things like that. And no doubt Crimson Desert will probably hit somewhere around that as well. Maybe it reaches Witcher 3 numbers where we're talking 10, 15, 20 million copies sold. Now, for context, that's extremely rare in the game industry. That almost never happens. There's a handful of games that have hit that 20 million sales mark. Most games, if they're really successful, sell between 5 and 10. And most developers are content with that, from what I can tell, as a just, consumer who just reads the news and watches interviews and things like that. Here's the thing of note. If $250 million is all you can kind of expect to make from most games, including your big AAA long-running franchises like Resident Evil, which that would have been the net income overall. If you sold 5-6 million units, that's what you're looking at, is somewhere between 250-300 million. If that's what you're expecting to make on the game, then your budget has to respect that. And we're living in an age now where $200 to $300 million is often the budget of a AAA game. A reckoning is taking place now, and executives and teams have to ask themselves the question of, if this is a realistic number that we can try to hit, what's a realistic number that we can budget for so that we actually make money? For the first time in gaming history, the audience is no longer growing to match the escalating budgets of the production. Video games have plateaued. I hate to say it. They haven't necessarily plateaued in graphics. They haven't necessarily plateaued in innovation. There's new interesting stuff coming out often. But they have plateaued in terms of an audience that is willing to pay. Traditional games that you would buy for $70 and then just play and enjoy have kind of hit a wall. And that wall's not really going to be extended in a world where free games exist. In a world where attention is so fragmented. I think we have to recognize and reconcile this idea of traditional gaming is probably as big as it's going to get. And there will be gamers getting older, and you'll have a few new entrants coming in, but interesting new games coming out, great games coming out, are probably just going to hit somewhere between 5 and 10 million sold. If you're lucky. Most games don't get that. Most AAA games don't hit that number these days. Maybe 2 or 3 million is something we should be happy with. And so if that's the case, we got to start looking at these budgets. We got to figure out, as an industry, what's the number What's the percentage of return that looks really good to us? If we expect to make 250, 300 million, are we happy investing 100? Are we going to get a decent product that we're happy with and that the fan is going to be happy with spending 100? Or do you want to ride those thin margins and do a $200 million project or a $300 million project that might only just make its money back? Anybody will tell you that's not a wise business decision, and at some point a reckoning will take place. Better than to be somewhere between the 60 and 100 if you want to maintain room for error, bad markets, room for growth, and the opportunity to pivot. Now you can hit that. Ghost of Yote developer Sucker Punch just said that their budget wasn't much bigger than Ghost of Tsushima, a game that came out in 2019, I want to say, off the top of my head. And that game had a $60 million budget. So you could maybe expect Ghost of Yote was maybe 70, 80. Gorgeous game, great game, and certainly made its money back. So we know it's possible with the right team. We know it's possible with the right talent. But is it possible in an industry where money seems to be drying up that investors can be happy with this sort of invisible wall we seem to have hit? And that perhaps is a longer conversation. Gaming is, traditional gaming at least, is going back to being kind of a weirdly niche hobby. A weirdly niche hobby that makes money, but not all the money. And in this modern age, the way finance and money flows, it's going to be very hard for new companies to make an entrance. We might be relying on the old faithfuls, those classic AAA studios we've known since the NES days, Super Nintendo and PlayStation 1 and 2, your Capcoms, your Konamis, your Square Enixes, and maybe a few first-party studios as well, although those seem to be closing very quickly too. I think in the next few years we're going to see fewer video games. A lot fewer. And we're certainly going to see fewer great ones. But maybe that's what we need. Until next time.